Remix. 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 Remix.
Ooh.
Here we are.
Peace. There we are. Here we are. Peace, everyone. Welcome to Women's Wednesday on the Remix Morning Show. I'm Jackie Lukman. I'm joined by Clau O'Brien Moscoso, and you know who's missing. You notice who's missing. It's the ear doctor. The ear doctor had a prior commitment today, so sorry. No remixes, no music breaks today. It's just us women's.
Yeah.
And look,
Apologies.
it's actually a new day, Cloud, because we seem to be remonetized on this platform.
Right. That's right. Randomly, or maybe not randomly. I think Jared
Yeah,
was
I
working on
don't
it for a
know.
while.
Yeah, I think that there has been a lot of advocating and challenging the demonetization on the back end. I think that Jared had been doing, and I think, and probably Renee as well. And I think that it finally paid off. So
That's
we
great.
are remonetized on YouTube. So hit those super chats, hit those contributions, or however it's done. I don't know, because I honestly don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. That's somebody else's job. I just talk. So
Same. On the
yeah.
mouth.
Right. So how have you been? What's been going on with you?
Nothing much. I mean, staying up to date on the news in the region because, man, it's wild. It's a wild ride. Yeah, I don't know if we want to necessarily get started right away, but I guess also, yeah, it's end of the year. I'm back in Brooklyn. So it's really good to be back. Yeah. New York is a lot more expensive than Lima.
I don't even like going to New York. I don't like being in New York and being hungry, because then it's like now I got to pay for this high price food. I got to pay for this expensive ass food, and I got to find a nice bodega to go to so that I can eat and not end up bankrupt, because you ain't never lied. New York City is, and living in Washington D.C. That's not like the difference in the high cost of living between New York and DC. Not that different. Not that, I mean, a one bedroom in a crummy neighborhood, crummy neighborhood in DC is still $3,000. You know, so it's not much different. Food is expensive here too, and yeah, it's hard out here, and I think
Yeah,
it's getting harder and harder
it
for
is.
people who didn't used to have it hard,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately they're new to this struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So their frame of reference for challenging the current conditions, very much steeped in liberalism, because they've been ignoring us radicals, telling people that this is the reality for most of us all along. So I've been noticing, I think, as I've been kind of winding down, at the end of the year, trying to, get into my relaxation mode. We've got one meeting before the end of the year, I think, this week, or at least I do. And then after this week and this one meeting tomorrow, where we're actually going to be planning the agenda for the first meeting of the year for BAP. Then after this meeting tomorrow, it's like, look, nothing. Nothing else. Nothing else serious is coming out. I'm not paying attention to, and I've been kind of trying to do that a little bit, ever since I finished the manuscript and got, we're getting toward the end of the year. But I have been noticing um, that more so-called middle class folks are feeling the pinch, or people who thought they were middle class are feeling the pinch. And I do think that there is more attention paid to the economic instability that is spreading and affecting more people.
Mhm.
So I do think there is a rise in understanding that something is wrong in
Right.
this country. However, I don't see people making the connections between the organizing we have been doing, the things we have been talking about, the issues we have been raising, and people connecting what we've been saying to what they're experiencing now. And that's and I guess, Cloud, that kind of makes me feel like it reminds me of what you say frequently, that organizing is advanced in the global South. And I don't think we've reached that kind of critical mass here where most people see themselves as a part of a collective struggle. I think that's what I was getting to. Like,
Yeah.
people realize, oh, my pockets are hurting and this is not fair to me. And what do I do to fix my situation? But in this country, people have not connected their newly experienced economic struggles to a collective struggle that has been going on for a long time. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I'm off in what I'm seeing, or if you're kind of seeing the same thing.
No, I think that that's fair. I think that's right. In terms of, yeah, people that weren't necessarily thinking about these things before because it didn't really affect them.
Hmm.
Now, nouveau poor. Like, oh shit, this sucks. But to make that connection with like, this is my individual problem, to like, how do we, because like you also are having that problem. My neighbor down the street or down the block is having the same problem. Like, you know, seeing it as part of a collective. And yeah, I mean, I think in some ways that the idea of like some of the struggles in the global South being more advanced is because the conditions there are so much dire. They're literally, facing at the front of facing that U.S. imperial beast that, they've just had to they've had to answer some of these questions long before. Now folks in the eternal core are like, oh shit.
Hmm.
Um, it's not to say that, I mean, I guess, yeah, it is to say that they've just been struggling longer because it's been hitting them, harder and first. But again, as we often talk about, right, like these things are not disconnected, right? The similar violence that's happening currently in the Caribbean and really throughout the region. It's not just the Caribbean, right?
Hmm.
Fisher folk have been killed in the Pacific, right? And I mean, Puerto Rico has essentially been, it was already colonized, let's not, but it's been hyper militarized to a point where it's, they have active daily base trainings. Some of the comrades that we speak to are like, oh yeah, we see the planes flying out, heading
Hmm.
towards Venezuela. Like it's all, very, yeah, it's all very heightened right now. And to be able to connect that to the internal, right? The internal and domestic imperialism and colonialism, right? This is, I think, obviously, that is our work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Consistently being able to connect that and as we were talking about in our previous meeting, right? Really getting people to see the framework of people's centered human rights as a collective process, right? One that we're constantly engaging in and constantly redefining and tweaking, um, and trying something out, going back, figuring it out, going back to the drawing board, you
Hmm.
know. Um, do I? Yeah, I mean, is the U.S. ready for that kind of struggle? I don't know.
Yeah, and I have been I honestly I have been trying really hard to watch a lot more ridiculous television just to cleanse my mind a little bit and get into this
Yeah,
relaxation mode because it's hard because everything that is going on and everything that is going on in the world is going on in the world for a reason at this time the way it is because exactly what we've been saying is happening. This empire is collapsing
hmm,
and it is thrashing, trying to
thrashing.
survive, and its tentacles are grabbing on to whatever it can to try to stabilize itself. You've seen animals when they are, fighting. That's exactly what this empire. So all of this stuff that's going on around the world, this seemingly psychotic and new stuff that Trump is doing that people are all freaked out about. We're going to talk about one of those things that was launched earlier, I think last week. That was funny when I heard it, but it was like, man, people, oh, this is okay. So we're going to talk about like one of those things in relation to immigration that people are like, this is insane, but no, we've been doing it for a while. But it's difficult not to see it's hard not to see the chickens not just coming home to roost, flocks like they have blocked out the sun. All There's so many chickens coming home to roost, and not just here, all throughout the colonies. I mean, look at what just happened in Chile. I Now, I get
Yeah,
that there's probably some serious election fuckery going on that happened with that election, but the struggle in Chile has been going on for a long, long time.
centuries.
And the fact that they have reverted to electing, um, they're calling him the right wing son of a Nazi, but that just means he's a Nazi. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
but they elected a Nazi for president
Hmm.
in Chile, and this is the and he is related to one of the people who was involved in the original application of the first US neoliberal complete economic plan in Chile, the Chicago Boys. I did a
Yeah,
whole
yeah. His
series.
dad was a Chicago boy.
Yeah, I did a whole series on neoliberalism that I posted here on Black Liberation Media that I originated over on a previous platform, Brick by Brick, a few years ago, that talked
Mm,
about the Chicago Boys and what they did in Chile and the impact it had, and the fact that we are still living with those policies today. Um, but it's like it's hard to relax. Like we're supposed to be observing this beautiful, wonderful holiday season, but how when what peace on earth? How are we going to be singing about peace on earth when the birthplace of Jesus
Jesus.
is being fucking bombed
Yeah.
by Zionists? They're committing genocide, and there's a genocide going on in Sudan, and there's ethnic cleansing and oppression and child slave labor going on in Congo, and Venezuela is being attacked, and fisher folk are being murdered in the Caribbean Ocean, and we've got kidnappings on the streets here in the U.S. and what holiday season? What
Mm,
peace on earth? What Christmas spirit? What are you kidding me? That it's been really hard to disconnect from the troubles that are going on in the world, and I think that's the point, though, Cloud. I don't think we can now.
right.
I think we're at the point where okay, all of this protecting your peace and not paying attention
You
you
can't.
can't disconnect from this. You
Mm-mm.
cannot because all of us have to be involved in this now. So even while I was watching, like I really love sci-fi and horror, so I've been binging on that, trying to just kind of relax. Really got into um the what is it, HBO Max series, It, Welcome to Derry. It
Mm,
is so good. It is so good. If you like Stephen King novels and if you really love the It franchise, you're going to love
mm,
this series. It is so, so good. But like I can only enjoy that for the time that I'm watching it, because as
yeah,
soon as it's over, I'm immediately thinking of, let me see what these people have done now. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, 100%. Someone in the chat has a question about who are the what or who are the Chicago boys?
Ooh,
You can enlighten
oh,
us.
mm, man. Okay, so I guess we are going to get into it, right? So,
But no time like the present.
no time like the present, since we have no more time. I
Right.
really feel like, is it just, it's not just me, is it, Cloud? Like,
No, no, there's something like very much in the not in the air. I don't want to say that, but the conditions are just so dire that it's inescapable.
there is no, I wake up I wake up every morning feeling like, what am I doing? Am I doing enough? Do I have enough time? And always feeling like now we are out of time. We're out of time. Everything feels frivolous if it's not focusing on these issues, right? So I'm glad I'm not the only one feeling like that, because you know how it is, especially with Black women, colonized women, racialized women, oppressed women in particular. Like, rest is almost a foreign concept to us, because the whole world and our families are on our backs, right? And and
Hmm.
and it's not like an antagonistic thing. That's just the nature of who we are, and our importance in all of our societies. It is no lie that women hold up half the sky. That's
Hmm.
absolutely true. Um, so it's hard to rest anyway. We've had to really struggle with this idea that we're not supposed to rest. We're supposed to be on all the time. Everybody's supposed to always depend on us. And we're always putting ourselves last. And here we are now, like literally fighting for humanity, realizing that okay, this is, rest is necessary, but it's also like this urgency that we feel. So I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one like feeling that, like in the back of my head all the time, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get up. You got, we're dying here. Um, yeah, that's a big old struggle. But the Chicago boys, thank you for asking that question. The Chicago boys came out of the Nixon administration. Was it Nixon? Yes. Um, and there were a bunch of economists that were recruited by Nixon and Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, he actually, there is a museum to Milton Friedman, and the economics department at the University of Chicago is named after Milton Friedman. Um, because Friedman is basically the father of American neoliberal politics, or neoliberal economic policy. And the Chicago boys basically created this enormous privatization scheme. That's what it was. That's really what a neoliberalism is. The foundation of it is the privatization of all public services, privatizing public services for profit, right? And it is focusing on allowing the capitalist economic market to control society. So there's a whole bunch of ideology behind that I really do go into very in depth in the original neoliberalism series on, that you can find on here on Black Liberation Media. But the Chicago boys was this group of economists who applied these neoliberal policies to Chile. Nixon, when Salvador Allende was elected president of Chile, Allende implemented socialist policies. in Chile, which really helped the working class, the poor, and the peasant class, but it really pissed off the rich Chileans, right? And certainly those policies of public redistributive policies and land redistribution was definitely one of those policies that Allende implemented, helped the indigenous and the peasant class incredibly, just really improve their condition. And of course the rich didn't like that. So being the resource rich country that it was, the US government did not want Chile to have a socialist president. They didn't want egalitarian or redistributive economic policies. They wanted to control the resources in Chile. So they had to get rid of Allende. And they did. They couped Allende. They claimed that he committed suicide. I don't believe that for a second. Nobody believes that Allende committed suicide. Um, but that's the way they framed it. And when they got rid of Allende, they propped up Augusto Pinochet, who was the general that the U.S. put in power to coup Salvador Allende. And Pinochet invited the Chicago boys in to implement all these neoliberal policies to privatize Chilean society, plunged millions of people back into crushing poverty, and the Pinochet regime was a dictatorial, murderous regime that disappeared and murdered hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Chileans,
Yeah.
all in the process of implementing these neoliberal privatization policies of the Chilean economy that the U.S. trained and dispatched economists called the Chicago Boys because they came out of the University of Chicago under Milton Friedman. That's what the Chicago Boys, that's who they were, that's what they did, and the policy they implemented, they literally had a gigantic 3-ring binder notebook that contained the policy that they called the brick. So that's who the Chicago Boys were. That's what they did, and that's why Chile reverting to that kind of leadership is incredibly important in the history of neoliberalism, and the connection between fascism and neoliberalism,
Yeah.
particularly in this issue of the struggle between capitalism and socialism. So that's what that is. So, but please find the neoliberalism series that I did post here on Black Liberation Media. Video quality is crappy because I didn't know what the hell I was doing back then. But really good information in those videos. But thanks for
Yeah.
asking that question.
Yeah. And I think to tie that to the election that just happened, right? And the past 6 years of what would have been should have been, and the people called for a reform that didn't deliver, right? And like the failures of this social democracy, that Boric championed, right? Like especially with like the Constitution, that was the ability to change the Constitution, to have a popular constituent assembly, and it went to the right wing, right? So the Pinochet Constitution, for the most part, is actually still intact. A lot of the promises, right? And Boric comes out of this, like the 2019 student movement that really erupted in Chile in 2019. As what you're saying, as a failure of neoliberalism, right? One of the major, almost taglines was, neoliberalism was born in Chile, it will die in Chile, right? And that was the demand of the peoples. But, I think oftentimes we say red or dead for a reason, because these, very milquetoast social democratic reforms don't really cut it. And especially Boric being so so amenable to the Biden administration in multiple instances, whether it came through like increased cooperation with Southcom, but even thinking about international, just international affairs, right? Was very pro the Ukraine war on on Ukraine side, right, and was consistently like speaking out against that. Thinking that if he bashed the actual socialist governments in the region, that would give him some like points with the Biden administration, with the U.S. in general, right? So it'd call Maduro a dictator, didn't win the elections properly, right? So I think the very real failures of what should have been a reform government, also really played a huge hand in like just giving up the country back, giving it back to the literal Nazis.
Yeah, I remember the protests that were going on in the streets in Chile around that revising or getting rid of, trying to get rid of the Pinochet era constitution. And the people struggling so hard just for years in the streets fighting against that constitution, and the them getting so close, but then like you said, the people who were supposed to carry out the will of the people didn't. And so then you're still left with this framework that they have been able to use to do this. And then I saw this. Oh, let me see if I can find the comment. Here it is. Um, uh, Kalanji 93 FJ says, a good friend of mine from Chile told me a huge factor in the election was the persuasion of right-wing social media bots, immigration fear mongering, and Red Scare tactics linking Jara with Maduro. I mean, again, that we see this going on here in this country, and we somehow don't understand that these tech giants do not just operate in this country, they also operate the same social media platforms all over the world.
Yeah.
So the same lies and bullshit and bot farms and bullshit lies that we see from the right here, that shit is happening all over the place. It is not just happening here. So for people who keep thinking that our struggles here are not connected to anybody else's and we don't have anything to do with anything that's going on in the rest of the world, the fact that the tech companies that we spread these claims on are doing the exact same thing in other countries around the world, that connects us to other people's struggles if people can't see anything else does. And that I just, man, I really do not get how people still don't understand that. Okay, if you don't consider the struggles of other human beings against oppression something that you should be concerned about, I mean, just the fact that we are indoctrinated by the same people, the same way, with the same lies and the same information, if that doesn't show you that we are connected, that our, at least our enemies see that we are all connected, that they all have to get together to indoctrinate all of us. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to tell people, Clap.
Yeah. Yeah. Internationalizing the struggle.
Mm,
There's really, there's no other way. If we're all, dealing with similar conditions by the same actors
hmm
or same cohort of actors, right? There's no reason why we're not. And actually, even thinking about, right, the military command structure. So I forget what it's called now, Westcom maybe. Essentially, the U.S. military command structure, Northcom and Southcom, is being combined right into this whole one Western Hemispheric Command,
Wow.
Westcom, right? If that doesn't actually, like, if the enemy understands our Americas as being connected, right? Why shouldn't we? You
Mm-hmm.
know, if they understand that whole, Abya Yala as one contiguous landmass as being connected, not just, I mean, obviously in their framework is to dominate the whole landmass, but again, like, we're at war, and if we don't see that and respond to it in that way, then it's a wrap.
I I hate to keep saying that we're cooked, but I just keep feeling like the more I see, and I also have to temper my cynicism, because that is what it is. I have to temper my cynicism that I know comes from um seeing the lack of intellectual rigor on social media. I have to temper that with engaging with people in real life, because engaging with people in real life is that's where we move people. But I would be lying if I didn't sit here, if I didn't admit that sometimes, look, our people really are deeply indoctrinated with these weird ideas, but that's why it struggled, though. That is why it is struggle, because this is the process of decolonization. We have to confront these backward and disjointed and really capitalist indoctrinated ideas, where people believe that there is something legitimate about this idea of Americanism, and that it can save them from what they don't even understand those very ideas created. Like, the reason your life is miserable is because of the thing you're aligning yourself with. And instead of listening to the people who have been telling you that all this time, you're going to listen to the people who are doing it to you, and who are telling you, no, it's the Venezuelans, it's the communists, it's the socialists, it's Antifa. Or no, they don't call it Antifa. They call it Antifa. It's Antifa. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. You're going to listen to Turning Point USA and Candace
Mm.
Owens and Tucker Carlson. How is it that people are more enamored and impressed with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene now coming out and saying, "Oh, Israel bad"? Why are y'all so like, wow, look at that? But from the beginning, since 2018, since 2013, since 2009, hell, since 1958. And before then, anti-imperialists and anti-Zionists have been telling you this is a crime, this is ethnic cleansing, this is genocide. You didn't pay any attention to anybody else saying that this was wrong all this time. But Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Candace Owens come out and say Israel bad after they've carried out the genocide, and y'all are impressed. Now you want to jump on that bandwagon instead of actually dealing with the history and the reality that we've been telling you about. And we lost Clow, but I'm sure she'll be right back. Man, we you know how it is. They've been trying to shut us up. And they'll do it however they can, but we're gonna keep plugging along. We really are. So again, y'all, thanks for joining. Appreciate you. It is Women's Wednesday, and this is the Remix Morning Show. I'm Jackie Lukeman. Clow will be back in a minute. Just had a little disconnection issue. Ear Doctor had a another commitment today, so let's take a look at an issue, because we've got the tribal war thumbnail up. And so let's talk about Sudan for a little bit. But I'm going to let our friends at Sovereign Media uh, um, explain what is going on in Sudan. Sovereign Media, if you are not following Sovereign Media, if you are not aware of Sovereign Media, please go to Facebook and Instagram and follow Sovereign Media. They are a conglomeration of left independent media outlets, a lot of them that have been silenced. So they created this fantastic media collective. So they recently posted on December 3rd about the developments in Sudan, and they have a really great carousel that I want to show with you. So that I want to share with you. So they say, in a crucial development in the war on Sudan, the UAE-backed Rapid Support Forces seized the Sudanese Army's 22nd Infantry Division headquarters. There's Cloud. She's back. Since the seized the Sudanese Army's 22nd Infantry Division headquarters in Babanusa, West Kordofan, with Babanusa the third important city to fall to the genocidal militia in the past 6 weeks. Not only is the RSF regaining momentum, but it is also strengthening its foothold in Western Sudan. Such advances have been made possible by increased Emirati supply, particularly fiber optic FPV drones that nullify a major strength of Sudan's army to withstand lengthy sieges. Sudan is now effectively divided in two. The RSF dominates the west, while the army controls the east. However, the RSF takeover of Babanusa means the militia has now secured uninterrupted access for its attacks on the contested North Kordofan state that sits between the militia and the state army's area of control. Babanusa is one of the urban centers of the Misseria. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. One of the Western Sudanese nomadic Arab tribes that the RSF claims to represent. However, since the RSF siege on the city began in January 2024, Babanusa has been emptied, displacing hundreds of thousands in the process and leading large numbers of Misseria to side with the army. The RSF is now set to attack Al Obeid city in North Kordofan, which has become a safe haven for the region's displaced, just as Al Fashir did for the indigenous people of Darfur. However, the concern is that should the RSF reach Al Obeid, the UAE-backed militia would not discriminate between Arab and non-Arab in its brutality. This militia does not represent a tribe. It only represents the UAE's interests in conquering Sudan and wiping out everything in their path. And this is the carousel that they have. And they explain why this is so significant in this war. Oops, sorry. This is a map of the region where they show the Rapid Support Forces militia control of Babanusa in West Kordofan, an oil-producing state there. Bordering South Sudan, solidifies the UAE-backed militia's foothold in Western Sudan. This is interesting to me, Cloud, because, you know, I had an experience this weekend where I mentioned China and their advancement in data centers and why we don't talk about the way China develops data centers where they're more efficient than the way they're produced here. And somebody responded, well, you know, China builds its data centers in Africa. You know, always indicting China with this accusation of China is exploiting Africa. But how come we never have that response when we're talking about the UAE? Because the UAE is absolutely exploiting this situation. They are creating this situation in Sudan to go after Sudan's oil. How come people have the immediate and intense smoke for China for something that they're actually not doing? Because most of China's data centers are actually in China. There are upwards of 400 of them in China, right? And that's a whole nother discussion. But how come we don't have this much smoke for the UAE? Literally fomenting civil wars because their interest in the region is oil. That I just thought that was interesting. They also say following the fall of Al Fashir in North Darfur state and Bara in North Kordofan, Baba Nusa is the third important city to fall to RSF in 6 weeks. These advances were made possible by intensified UAE supply, particularly fiber optic VPF drones. We talked about that. The RSF has now secured uninterrupted access for its attacks on the pivotal North Kordofan state, which separates the militia's stronghold in Western Sudan and army controlled Eastern Sudan. See, you see this here? Just a week earlier, the RSF announced a unilateral ceasefire. As suspected, this was only a cover for the continued flow of UAE support and the militia's ongoing battlefield movements. And they show where Baba Nusa lies in the tribal region of the Miseria, one of the Western Sudanese nomadic Arab groups of the Bagada Tribal Confederacy, which the RSF claims to represent and predominantly recruits from. However, since the RSF siege of Baba Nusa began in early 2024, the entire city has fled Miseria, leading Miseria tribal leaders to side with the army. The militia does not represent a tribe. It represents the UAE's sub-imperial interests in conquering Sudan. The RSF's next target is Al Obeid. This is so ridiculously awful. So I'm going to give you the link to this post and this carousel so you can go on and follow Sovereign Media yourself and support them. But yeah, that is the civil war that the United Arab Emirates is fomenting right now in Sudan to steal their oil. And we seem to have smoke for other countries that ain't never done nothing to us, but we have no smoke whatsoever for the imperialists, for the actual imperialists, and in this case, Sovereign Media calls them the UAE a sub-imperial power. We got no smoke for them. Wow.
Yeah. I also dropped in the private chat the YouTube video link that Erica interview on the war in Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
That's really great. Is it? Oh yeah, with Will Merleon.
Mm-hmm.
And actually on our YouTube channel, there's a couple of interviews that I think speak to this. Also, Erica and Tunde spoke both about like what's happening in Sudan and Venezuela. So just to get a little bit more background information, but yeah, I mean, you know, there's absolutely imperial forces behind this. The UAE, you know, imperial backed forces that are also supporting, you know, Zionist aims in this. Yeah, U.S. imperialism gonna imperialism.
Gonna and just to be clear, for those who might not, this isn't just the United Arab Emirates are not doing this just for themselves. They're doing this with the full support and backing and for the benefit of their partners, the United States government. That's we need to believe that yes, the United States is all in this mess. So and yeah, the data centers conversation that I gotta have that another day, because obviously the data center issue it's huge, but I didn't really understand it entirely, because I think it emerged so quickly, at least in my estimation. So I didn't understand that data centers have been around for a long time, and countries have had them for a long time, ever since, you know, this internet thing has been a thing. So this has been an issue for a while, and the way other countries do this, or have done this, does matter, and we need to we need to understand how they exist in other countries in their contexts. But again, our understanding of our relationship to other countries, or other countries' relationships to Africa seems to still be very much framed through a U.S. Western imperialist perspective of that other country. Like it's very weird how I think we don't realize we see other countries. This is why people are not concerned about what Israel is doing in Palestine, what the US is doing in Venezuela, what it's done to Cuba, because they really look at these countries as the enemies of them.
Hmm.
Just because the US government says these countries are the enemies of the US. And that's but then that's why we're organized as Cloud.
Yeah. I wanted to drop also if we could talk about Trump ordering the blockade on oil tankers into Venezuela, because even the language of that is so, it's maddening. So there's an
Hmm.
NPR article if you want to go through that, but
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. This is already a criminal, illegal, immoral blockade against Cuba. Now Trump he wants to order a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers into Venezuela. President Donald Trump said Tuesday he is ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers into Venezuela, ramping up pressure on the country's authoritarian leader. Now, this is NPR,
yeah,
the
of course.
alleged liberal media outlet, supposedly independent, calling another country's democratically elected president an authoritarian leader. All right.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what's more authoritarian than a unilateral sanction and economic warfare. I mean, what is more authoritarian? But
Right.
sure.
That was very weird. It's like, how are you calling the leader of the country that is going to suffer the blockade and the sanctions the authoritarian and not the president who is imposing them? That makes no sense to me. But anyway, they go on to say in a move that seemed designed to put a tighter chokehold on the South American country's economy, Trump's escalation comes after U.S. forces last week seized an oil tanker off Venezuela's coast, an unusual move that followed a buildup of military forces in the region. It wasn't unusual, it was illegal.
Hmm.
It was illegal. And this is the so-called independent liberal media outlet framing this in this way. In a post on social media Tuesday night announcing the blockade, Trump alleged Venezuela was using oil to fund trafficking and other crimes and vowed to continue the military buildup until the country gave the U.S. oil, land, and assets, though it was not clear why he felt the U.S. had a claim.
At least they put that. Like, is this some kind of journalistic integrity? I don't know. I don't think so, but at least there's that.
They go on to say Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before until such time as they return to the United States of America all the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. What the fuck? When did Venezuela steal anything from this country? Pentagon officials referred all questions about the post to the White House. Venezuela's government released a statement Tuesday accusing Trump of violating international law, free trade, and the principle of free navigation with a reckless and grave threat against the South American country. On his social media, he assumes that Venezuela's oil, land, and mineral wealth are his property, the statement said of Trump's post. Consequently, he demands that Venezuela immediately hand over all its riches. The president of the United States intends to impose in an utterly irrational manner, a supposed naval blockade on Venezuela with the aim of stealing the wealth that belongs to our nation. Um, the Maduro's government, according to the statement, plans to denounce the situation before the United Nations. Then they go on to, on and on and on. So, they go down, and later on in the article they talk about the state-owned oil company, Petróleos de Venezuela SA, commonly known as PDVSA, has been locked out of global oil markets by U.S. sanctions. It sells most of its exports at a steep discount. They actually called it the black market.
Of course they did.
What? I can't. Okay,
Anything
I'm gonna
that's
give
not
y'all a
U.S.
link to this damn
sanctioned.
thing. I can't read it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That
Y'all
was a lot.
gotta read this shit yourselves, because I can't. Is it is Venezuela, Cuba, China, and every other country that wants to trade with those countries? How is their trade considered the black market just because the United States doesn't like it?
Yeah. Well, even that, right? It sets them up, reveals their understanding of the global order, that it is them, it's the US that commands it. Anything else outside of that is considered, underground somehow. But even aside from this, right? So as we're seeing these escalations happening in real time, quite literally, the State Department also released not finally, but officially designated Maduro, or in the Venezuelan government, a terrorist organization. So understanding that, we understand what this is going to be setting up and laying the groundwork for, right? Being able to actually go in and try to enact regime change, what they weren't able to do in the past decade plus, 2 decades almost, of lawfare, of soft power and funding the right-wing opposition, the very crazy right-wing opposition, murderous, that during the Guarimbas killed many Venezuelans, and many of them Afro-Venezuelans, right? So I think this is we're in a moment in time where we're like, the attack is coming. We don't really know exactly when, but I think we see it's coming closer and closer. But even as a response to this, I kind of wanted to read this from the Bolivarian government of Venezuela communique. A united Venezuela rejects Mr. Trump's grotesque threat and will denounce it. On the night of today, December 16, 2025, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in violation of international law, free trade, and freedom of navigation, has issued a reckless and serious threat against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Through his social media, he assumes that Venezuela's oil, lands, and mineral wealth are his property. Consequently, Venezuela must immediately hand over all of its wealth to him. The President of the United States intends to impose, in an absolutely irrational manner, an alleged naval military blockade against Venezuela with the objective of stealing the riches that belong to our homeland. Venezuela, in the full exercise of the international law that protects us, of our Constitution and the laws of the Republic, reaffirms its sovereignty over all its natural resources, as well as the right to free navigation and free trade in the Caribbean Sea and in the oceans of the world. Consequently, it will proceed in strict adherence to the UN Charter to fully exercise its freedom, jurisdiction, and sovereignty above these warmongering threats. Our ambassador to the United Nations will immediately proceed to denounce this grave violation of international law against Venezuela. And this is important. We call upon the people of the United States and the peoples of the world to reject by all means this extravagant threat, which once again reveals Donald Trump's true intentions to steal the riches of the country that gave birth to the United Liberating Army of South America and to our liberator, Simón Bolívar. The people of Venezuela, in perfect popular military and police unity, will know how to defend their historic rights and prevail along the path of peace. Mr. Donald Trump, verbatim, brandishes the following interventionist and colonialist expression: until they return to the U.S., all the oil, land, and other assets they previously stole from us. Which, how do you fix your mouth to say that? His true intention, which has been denounced by Venezuela and by the people of the United States in massive demonstrations, has always been to appropriate the country's oil, land, and minerals through gigantic campaigns of lies and manipulation. Venezuela will never again be a colony of any empire or foreign power, and will continue together with its people along the path of building prosperity and the unrestricted defense of our independence and sovereignty. The Venezuelan people, in perfect popular military and police unity, remain firm in the unrestricted safeguarding of their territory, their wealth, and their freedom. With our father liberator, we say, fortunately, it has been seen that a handful of free men can defeat powerful empires. Caracas, December 16, 2025.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just to put this in context, this was just done by
Right.
U.S. courts just earlier, a couple of weeks ago too. Oh, sorry. Venezuela denounces U.S. ordered forced sale of oil company Citgo. A Delaware judge has ordered the sale to settle debts as Venezuela says U.S. military buildup is targeting its oil reserves. Well, we just heard Donald Trump say that it is. Venezuelan Vice President and Minister of Petroleum Delcy Rodriguez has condemned the U.S. court's decision to authorize the fraudulent and forced sale of Venezuelan oil company Citgo in the United States to pay off billions of dollars in debts, alleged billions of dollars in debts. We energetically reject the decision adopted in the judicial process, Rodriguez said in a statement read on state television about the sale, which the Venezuelan government has always opposed. Delaware Judge Leonard Stark last week ordered the sale of Citgo's parent company to Amber Energy, an affiliate of the hedge fund Elliott Investment Management, for $5.9 billion. Elliott Investment Management said in a press release that the court order was backed by a group of strategic U.S. energy investors. Citgo, a Houston-based subsidiary of Venezuela's PDVSA, has been facing claims that it owes more than $20 billion to creditors, reflecting the broader financial woes of the South American country under U.S. sanctions, which have targeted its once profitable oil industry. So let me the U.S. government sanctions Venezuela, keeps them from selling their material on the open market by making it illegal, or at least by punishing countries that want to trade with Venezuela. So Venezuela can't sell its oil to the wealthier nations. And then, because Venezuela doesn't make the kind of money that they would if they were able to sell on the open market, then the so-called creditors, the country that imposed the sanctions, now says, well, Venezuela, that the company, they can't pay their debts. So then they force the sale of. This is gangster. This is
Gangsterism.
gangsterism.
What
This
Adama
is a
calls it.
mob shakedown.
Mm-hmm.
And it always has been. This is not new just because Trump, it's not a mob shakedown because Trump is doing it.
Right.
Because this lawsuit didn't start with Trump. All right. So all of this is nothing more than this particular administration ramping up the long process of the reimposition or the re-strengthening of the Monroe Doctrine. That's what this is. It is an attempt to recolonize economically and militarily if they have to, as you are seeing the Trump administration do, recolonize the Americas. And firmly reestablish these countries as America's front yard now, not backyard anymore. So this, yes, it is the escalation and the speed with which Trump is uh, bringing all of these long-term plans to some type of boiling point. Yeah, that is the speed with which this is happening is unprecedented. But understand, this has been going on. This country has been attacking Venezuela and Cuba and Ecuador and Chile. They've been doing this for a long time. This stuff didn't just happen in the past year.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, yeah, no, thank you. Imani dropped a piece that Brother Jibo wrote for Black Agenda Report. I think in a lot of ways, responding to the to this notion that, well, it doesn't have anything to do with me, so what am I going to do about it? Which is this individualism that is constantly having to be fought against. But appreciate, yeah, folks should read that article, that piece. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's there's so much, and just to kind of highlight, I thought this was really interesting. How long this kind of stuff has been going on, and I think no, that's not what I want to say. I think this is the what we're going to talk about. This next story is a really good example of how this administration is ramping up or accelerating these long-term plans to this crisis point that have always been going on in this country. I think this story is a good example of that. And I didn't even realize that it was. So this was the story that I saw a few days ago that I laughed at first, but then I laughed at it, but then I was like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. What is this? Because you don't just create some card and like we're gonna send it to people. If they give me $1 million, that's what people think he has done. Okay, so this is was reported in CNN. Trump Gold Card launches, offering expedited immigration pathway with a $1 million fee. Okay, this seems ridiculous on its face. I know it does. And I think this is actually what the thing looks like. Um, they say that President Donald Trump Wednesday officially launched his gold card visa, a new immigration pathway that will allow foreigners to pay $1 million to expedite their visa application or have companies pay $2 million to sponsor a foreign worker they want to bring into the US. Very excitingly for me and for the country, we've just launched the Trump Gold Card, the president said at a White House roundtable event. You can go to this. That's the website for it, and it has a link to the official application promising U.S. residency in record time. The official website says for a $15,000 DHS processing fee, and after background approval, a contribution of $1 million, receive U.S. residency in record time with the Trump Gold Card. The official website reads. In an interview with Fox News on Thursday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the program will ensure these are the best people coming in. They're economically capable of driving our economy. He also described it as a much more powerful version of the green card, which allows immigrants to live and work permanently in the United States. Now, I have to pause right here because immigration in and of itself has never been these people's problem. They have never opposed immigration as a concept because how the hell do you think they got here? That's like, so they don't have a problem with immigration. They have a problem with who immigrates here. So they created their own, or we think they created their own special immigration process. Uh, but that's not really what they did. And I'm going to show you. They say that the applicant will need to attend a visa interview and submit any additional documents in a timely. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're not going to do any of that shit. They're not going to do any kind of process. No. The site notes a successful applicant will receive lawful permanent resident status as an EB1 or EB2 visa holder. Employment-based visas awarded to individuals who have extraordinary or exceptional abilities. There's no definition for what that means, what either one of those words means. And there are plans to introduce a platinum card that will invite foreign nationals to add their names to a waiting list to get a visa for a $5 million contribution. For that amount of money, the administration promises that eligible applicants will be able to spend up to 270 days in the United States without being subject to U.S. taxes on non-U.S. income. Yeah. So here you go. I'm going to drop that in the chat for you to read. But I was curious because I thought, how were they gonna this? You just create a card and you just issue it and you just tell people, give me $1 million and you can come to the. How does that work? Well, it works. It would work because the program already exists. This is another article in CNN about the card, but you go down, you have to go down, you have to go down. They talk about it. This is the gold card. This is that. And then you get down to, where are you? Here it is. Created by Congress in 1992. The EB-5 program can grant green cards to immigrants who make a minimum investment of at least $1,050,000 or $800,000 in economically distressed zones called targeted employment areas to create jobs for American workers, according to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website. So I said, oh, this program already exists where rich people can just give the United States $1 million and come over here. And yes, it does. There are some differences, and I just happen to find this little website that explained the difference between the Trump gold card and this existing program. This is Greenberg Trial. I don't know who they are, but they did do this nice little comparison. The Gold Card program explained and how it compares to EB-5. This was published just a few days ago. Sorry. Let me get this. Blow this up for you. Here we go. The United States has introduced a new immigration pathway aimed at attracting ultra. Can we stop using all these different words for fucking rich? Rich. The ruling class. That's what this is for. The Gold Card program, created by Executive Order 14351 in September 2025. This program arises from executive action rather than an act of Congress. It operates outside the traditional statutory framework that governs the EB-5 immigration investor program. As a result, it presents both opportunities and legal uncertainties for prospective applicants. So they give a detailed analysis of the Gold Card program and the existing program. They say that unlike EB-5, Congress did not enact the Gold Card. It's an executive initiative implemented solely through presidential authority. That distinction has significant implications. It may be modified, suspended, or rescinded by a future administration. Don't hold your breath. It does not include statutory grandfathering protections. Investors who begin the process today do not have guaranteed eligibility if the program is later withdrawn or struck down by a court. So if they give that $1 million or that $5 million and in the next administration or or by next month, if the courts say this is illegal, they don't get that money back. And they are shit out of luck and all that money. And it relies on existing immigrant categories for visa issuance, meaning adjudications may still need to satisfy the regulatory standards for extraordinary or exceptional ability in the national interest. For example, EB-1A normally requires the applicant to have sustained national or international acclaim, whatever that means. Exceptional ability EB-2 normally requires the applicant to have an advanced degree and meet other criteria in addition to meeting the requirements for a national interest waiver. In effect, the Gold Card overlays a financial contribution model onto existing immigrant visa frameworks, creating a hybrid program that blends donation-based residency incentives with employment-based visa adjudications. Key features of the gold card: $1 million per individual applicant, including each family member, or $2 million for corporate sponsored applicants, plus $1 million per dependent, and a $15,000 USCS processing fee. Unlike EB-5, the funds are not invested. But if you believe those funds are actually invested in the current program, I got a bridge and I got a lake in Southeast DC right out here out my window to sell you. The funds are not invested. The gold card track does not carry job creation obligations and are not returned under any circumstances. But if you were wondering what the job creation obligations are under the existing program, EB-5, where here it is. Here's a nice little table that they have. And here it is. The requirement for the existing program, EB-5 Investor Visa, the program that was created in 1992, they only have to create 10 US jobs under the existing programs, under the existing EB. 10, not 100, not 1,000, not 10,000, 10 US jobs. That's the existing requirement for rich foreign people to be able to pay $1 million, invest in an existing corporation, and have that corporation be in a place that the U.S. Immigration and Nationalization Service dictates, because that's the current requirement. And they only have to create 10 jobs. 10. The Trump program does not have that job requirement. It's literally a donation, not to the US government. It goes in Donald Trump's pocket. So, aside from all of the legal stuff, Cloud, all the legal questions, my big question with Trump doing this is, if he could create a whole separate immigration track using the framework of an existing program like it, why couldn't Democrats do the same thing and create anything good for us? Why couldn't they do that? If it was this easy for Trump to do this with an executive order that serves the ruling class, why do the Democrats never do anything like this to serve the people? Even if it's created under the same kind of a legal ambiguity, if it can be rescinded in the next administration, if it can be struck down by the courts, why aren't Democrats? Why haven't they done more of this? If it was this easy for Donald Trump or Trump or Trash or whatever, if it was this easy for him to do this, what am I missing?
Yeah, they yeah, like you said, none of this is new. Um, and that was in 92. Again, speaking to what Erica always says, the 90s are severely understudied, and I think a lot of what was started then, or what really started percolating at that point is coming to a head now. We're like really seeing what the very real consequences, material consequences of a lot of those policies, a lot of the mostly deregulation, across all sectors, across all industries. And yeah, I mean, this is not surprising whatsoever, right? They're not trying to accept people from quote unquote shithole countries, meaning poor, black, brown, the colonized, But hey,
Mhm.
you got money, come over.
Right. And I think the thing that I really thought a lot about too, Cloud, is that Trump is not a standalone individual. He's got an entire administration. He's got the department heads of all of the agencies. He's got, right? But all of these people in these agencies did not just come there when Trump was elected the second time. A lot of those people have been in these positions. And they have gone right along with helping them do it, helping him do these things. Yes, he replaced the heads of some of these agencies, but he didn't fire everybody in the agency and replace everybody in the agency with a whole new workforce. Yeah, he did lay off a bunch of people, fired a bunch of people from the federal government, but that was what, like 350,000 people? Do you know how many people the federal government employs? And then at the state level too. So yes, this is not just Trump sitting there doing this all by himself. He has people in the administration, throughout the administration, facilitating this. But these people are not like newly appointed. They didn't just get these jobs when Trump came into the second administration. They've been there. And if we don't see that in the federal agencies, surely you must see that in the military, right? Surely people can understand that nobody was fired from the military except for the very top brass, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They were, Trump's appointees were put there, but all of these people driving the ships and navigating them and with their hands on the buttons and blowing things up and murdering people, those people have been in those positions the whole time. So if the same individuals, some of the same individuals who were working in these agencies previously are carrying out this ridiculousness, then my question is even it's I feel like it's an even more urgent question now. How come the Democrats didn't leverage the power they had to do the same thing, but for different reasons, right? And that's not like a question that I expect it's a rhetorical question. I understand the reason. I'm asking the question because I need y'all to answer. I need y'all to ask yourselves that question. You should be asking yourselves, wait a minute, if he can just create out of nowhere this whole different immigration program, how come the Democrats couldn't do half of something decent for us? So I just really think that this particular thing with this ruling class immigration scheme that Trump has now introduced is a really good example of how the infrastructure for everything he is doing that we hate has always been there. It's been there. This has been there since 1992. So what is he doing that is worse? That he's accepted it's donations and he gonna put it in his pocket? Okay. But this program has always existed. This has always been a way for the ruling class around the world to get permanent residency status in the United States. Just come here and create 10 jobs. 10. Like a right-wing Venezuelan can come here and open a barbershop. Lord have mercy. What else you got, Cloud? Because I can't.
Yeah, it's rough. um, no, I mean, I wanted to maybe go through the um, article that the Department of War itself put out on the merger of Northcom and Southcom.
Ooh.
It was the last um, link that I dropped in the private chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So Interestingly, right, this is again, as they say, in a historic transition. Um, they're combining and activating the U.S. Army Western Hemisphere Command, and its center location is going to be coming out from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which, if folks remember, right, there's been a lot of a whole book that came out, but also just investigations around the ties that Fort Bragg itself has with narco trafficking, right? So at the same time that they're going after Maduro and the Bolivarian Revolution around so-called narco terrorism, have now officially claimed and labeled the Venezuelan government as narco terrorists. They are combining Northcom and Southcom, understanding it as our America as well. For them is our Americas, right? The U.S. is Americas. From the very place where investigations have found out that it's like leading the whole structure of narco trafficking within the U.S. and even in the region. So, I think for us, this allows a lot of, major opportunities to point out those contradictions, right? But also being able to see, this is exactly why it's not about narco terrorism. This is exactly why it's not ever been about, whatever excuses they tell us for whatever specific war is happening at the moment, but resources extraction. In the case of Venezuela, also getting to Cuba, right? As you mentioned before, some of the people in Trump's sphere, right, particularly Marco Rubio, whose brother-in-law himself is a convicted narco trafficker, or Narco Rubio, as some people have been calling, which I think is great, right?
Yes.
It allows us to say, to really break open that myth, and really be able to connect once again, really connecting, right, what is happening internally to what is domestically to what is happening abroad. And I mean, they couldn't have made it clearer that this is happening under one military command structure. And so that any sort of pushback or fight back or defense against this has to be that as well, right? So I think when we think about, right, with BAP, with the Zone of Peace campaign, with all of the organizations in the region that we work with, right, this has been that, trying to move towards that unification of our struggles, because we know that it is the same enemy. What's happening in Venezuela right now is directly related to the remilitarization of Puerto Rico and the region as a whole, right? So U.S. militarism really is what is allowing this to happen, right? So yeah, as organizers, as folks out there in the ground, we gotta, constantly be up to date with this, and then also understand, all right, what does this mean for us on the ground, though? How do we move this? How do we, how do we popularize this in a way that people are going to get, oh, this is my struggle too?
Yeah.
And Haiti, right? As we've been saying within the Haiti Americas team, throughout BAP, right? Labeling those quote unquote gangs, right? Also similar situation in terms of crime being weaponized, and Erica has a wonderful piece on Hood Communists that has also been republished on BAR and even on the BAP website. Crime being used as a Trojan horse for this type of colonial control. And so we see it's not really about crime, right? It's not really about narco terrorism, narco trafficking, because according to multiple investigations, Fort Bragg is kind of the epicenter of that. So it's not even, it's not about that. It is about, colonial control, maintaining that white supremacist order, and continuing to extract those resources, and making sure that there's no viable alternative to this system, right? I think in a lot of ways, not just again, when I was referring to Marco Rubio, for him, for sure, the next step is Cuba, right? So it's all tied together in a very heated war, right? That I think, yeah, it's at this point, looking at the people of Venezuela, like they've been preparing for this moment, and I think that's that's kind of the path that folks need to be on.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to read a little bit of this. This is from the U.S. Department of War, and I actually appreciate that they reverted back to the original name because it's honest. Army activates U.S. Army Western Hemisphere Command in historic transition ceremony. The Army activated the U.S. Army Western Hemisphere Command in a ceremony held December 5th at Fort Bragg, uniting U.S. Army Forces Command, U.S. Army North, and U.S. Army South into a single four-star operational headquarters. Today, we become something new. Not really. But U.S. Forces Command's spirit of readiness, resilience, and warfighting strength will not fade. Rather, that spirit will radiate through the Army, said Army General Andrew Pappas, who has led the command since 2022. The ceremony marked a significant moment in the Army's transformation of the establishment of West HEMCON. That's what it's called, West HEMCON, is part of a broader transformation campaign to modernize Army command structures and improve operational agility. The newly established command is an operational warfighting theater command headquarters overseeing all Army plans, posture, operations, and power projection in support of U.S. Northern and Southern commands and aligned with national strategic priorities. Western Hemisphere Command is designed for speed, flexibility, and relevance to effectively respond to challenges in our complex times, said Army Chief of Staff General Randy George. By consolidating these headquarters and aligning the theater, we will streamline processes, eliminate redundant efforts, and free up talent and resources. This will allow us to better support our fighting formations. Not supposed to have any fighting formations. I thought Donald Trump ended 19 wars. I thought he ended 38 wars. What fighting formations? Where are we fighting at? That we need to have a consolidation. Come on, y'all. And these people, again, that's another. How long has that man been the commander of that unit? 22 years of that command, the head of that command. 22 years. How many administrations is that? And are they hesitating to carry out any of the commands that are coming from this administration? No, they are not. They're like 5 people so far throughout the entire year in the military that we have seen, I think, maybe on one hand, who have come out publicly and opposed this stuff. But everybody else following orders.
Yep. And I also just linked that piece that the Haiti Americas team did on the connections between Venezuela and Haiti, right? I think especially in this moment, and what the Haiti Americas team says, what Dr. Jemima Pierre has been consistently stating that Haiti is used as a laboratory for empire in the region, and I think without those quote unquote gangs, right, or rather armed paramilitary groups being labeled terrorist organizations like last year or earlier in the year, I think it was. Now I'm forgetting the timeline. This wouldn't have happened, right? Mm-hmm. It like sets up that president to then be like, all right, here we go. This is how we're going to be doing it throughout the region. So when we say, these are connected struggles, it's not out of some woo-woo metaphysical like liberal we're all the same, like it's because these are the same people, the same military, quite literally the same military structures, right, carrying out objectives that they've already planned all of this, right, So yeah, I think it's very necessary to yeah, constantly be making these connections, and consistently be raising the fact that there is opposition to this, and that we need to be the ones that are. Oh, also, yeah, I think on Bar. Let me check that out. But there should be another statement today, specifically on Haiti. Let me check that out.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like I should really just start every Women's Wednesday with a rundown of
Right,
what's published in
right,
Bar.
right.
I think we should start doing that. And going through the sovereign media scroll. I think that's a good way to kick off the show on Wednesdays. Because we be putting stuff out like our teams, Haiti America's team, Africa team, North South Project for People Centered Human Rights. I mean, the Solidarity Network, they be working. We do so much work trying to explain these situations that seem so complex, and the people who are providing the analysis of it are just brilliant in their analysis, and they are really great writers, so that what they write is not like what you said, Cloud, like esoteric and hyper academic, and you can't understand it. It's man, I really enjoy learning from the people who put out this information. So yeah, I think we're going to start doing that.
Yeah, that would be great. But this particular backgrounder that was published in Bar, speaks to the recent TPS withdrawal, right, for Haiti. TPS being temporary protected status,
Mhm.
um, and how it's not just right. These things are not separate. Like there is forced displacement of Haitians happening on the island and off the island because of U.S. imperialism, because of consistent U.S. meddling, um, and the funding of these paramilitary groups to clear out certain areas of not just more than anything Port-au-Prince, right? Because for a long time they've really just been wanting a military base there, and even thinking about how upcoming and really inevitable, and I think if anything, what is happening in the region is also part of a new Cold War against China because of the relations, not just with Venezuela, to Belt and Road Initiative and BRICS. Well, Venezuela is not in BRICS, but and again, we can probably thank, some of these social democrats that particularly Lula, right? But besides the point,
Mm,
um, these things again are connected, right? So when TPS has been officially terminated, it was terminated late last month. Um, in a similar language to the TPS cancellations for Venezuelans, right? As it says here, in both cases, the Department of Homeland Security claimed that continued protections were quote unquote not in the national security or foreign policy interests of the United States, affirming U.S. policy abuses redefine their interests at a whim. This has been a long and politicized, very politicized, and um, yeah, very long politicized efforts from the U.S. to not just wreak havoc on the island, but then as Haitians are forced, forcibly displaced, they
mhm,
also have to go through a very dangerous and dire conditions trying to get not just even throughout the region, right? A
mhm,
lot of the immigration laws, and here you can think we specifically cite the Dominican Republic, where there's been in just a wild level of harsh racialized exclusion for um, Haitians for Dominicans of Haitian descent and for Afro Dominicans, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like y'all can all of y'all can get it, you know. Um, and we make the point here that this has been happening for a very long time under both Democratic and Republican administrations. It's not just, again, we're not looking at this as this is just a brand new situation
Mhm.
that started under Trump, but that this has been decades long, if not longer, of you know, yeah, a war against popular Haitian sovereignty.
Mhm.
And specifically linking to the gang suppression force. So I think on December 8th was the first few, maybe hundreds of Kenyan troops under the new gang suppression force that was signed by the Security Council on September 30th.
Mhm.
Right. So this is an even more like heightened force under the UN that, you know, as most of these missions, right, prior to that was a multi support service mission. I forget the MSS mission, right? This U.S. backed Kenyan led. It still continues to be Kenyan led and of course U.S. backed, but it stipulates even more, you know, more control for the U.S. And just more displacement for Haitians, right? Whether internally, right? Haitians are being displaced internally from the city to other areas, um, and throughout the region.
Yeah, this is a fantastic article. And I dropped it in the chat for y'all, but I just saw this here again with the 90s, man. The infamous Clinton orchestrated rice importation scheme that devastated the Haitian rice industry and destroyed national food sovereignty. Like the literal reason there is a food and hunger issue in Haiti is because of Bill Clinton. And I just whenever there's a conversation about American farmers being angry about any kind of economic policy that takes money from them, I have no sympathy whatsoever, because I don't think there is a group of businesses in this country other than like corporations that get subsidized more heavily than large scale farmers in this country. They get enormous subsidies. Why do they get so much subsidies? Because you would think that they would just feed this nation, right? No. Where do you think that rice comes from? That gets exported from the US to these other countries, right? And we know that Haiti is an agricultural country. So why would they need imported rice? Why would they need food to be imported from anywhere to the, well, after the US invaded the island, killed all of the Haitian pigs, the indigenous Haitian pigs. I forget that there's a specific name for them, but they
Yeah.
were black.
Mm-hmm.
But they killed, the US military killed every Haitian pig. And they eventually destroyed Haitians' ability to eat their own grain. So instead of Haiti being able to feed themselves with their locally grown rice, the US destroyed Haitian rice crops and then imported US rice. That's why American farmers get the subsidies they do. Because this whole business about American farmers feeding the world does not need America's food. But America's grain is forced on countries that the US has occupied, invaded, or imposed imperialist policies on as a means of control and dependency on the US. So, US agriculture as an industry is literally propped up by US imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a fuck about US farmers.
Yeah. Not if they're being used in this way.
Yeah, so it's just this is it is all coming to a head, Clow, and I don't know. I'm other than the continuing to do what we do. Um, I think we're feeling and we're seeing that everything we do has to be intensified, but that still kind of doesn't feel like enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question that, we're trying to and have been thinking about building out and trying to actually put into practice in the Zone of Peace campaign and with the US NATO Out of Our Americas network, right? What is that deeper coordination amongst our, the organizations of our people look like, right? What does it mean to, because we can, have millions of people out on the streets, and in the past we have, right? How many people came out during the Iraq War? Millions, literally millions. Did that stop it? Right? So is that the goal, right? Of course you want to build your base, you want to build a very diverse movement, but you also want to build ideological clarity and actually thinking about how do we even, you know how do we stop or put hold or hurting on the war machine, right? What are some of those pressure points that we can think about, you know actually actually being able to hit and create some kind of a disruption, right? Because I don't think it's enough to just get as many people out as possible, right? I mean, we've been, I think, building collective, like mass consciousness is obviously necessary, but then, or awareness rather, is necessary. But as Erica has said, and says, right, like that, it has to go beyond just awareness and getting to that collective process of development and mass consciousness, right? That always has to happen. And as we, say with a lot of just organizing in general, it's a process, right? It is a part of that collective process where, as individuals, we have to think beyond individualism, thinking about the collective. What does it mean for us to, build out some kind of structures that can sustain us, right? Or whatever that looks like. But I think, especially in this moment, it is what are the things that we need and the structures we need to build to defend ourselves. Like, if we are actually understanding ourselves as a people at war, domestically and abroad, what does that look like, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that question, what does that look like? I love how I have gotten used to, and this I think is another one of those things that is beautiful for me in organizing that I have learned that has caused me to grow and mature. I love how I've learned to ask that question, like literally, what does it look like? If we need X, Y, and Z, that's great. Recognizing that we need X, Y, and Z, or that we're not doing, A, B, and C, or recognizing, critiquing our weaknesses. That's fantastic. But for a lot of us, we don't provide what it looks like for us to provide the thing that we're not, or for us to do the thing that we're not. And I think part of part of that, I think, is because our frame of reference is this country. That So our imagination of what these things could look like is limited to a place where we don't know the history, so we don't have anything to reference to answer that question. What does it look like if we were to do X, Y, and Z? And we know so little about other countries where they have gone through this stage of the revolutionary process, and they are more advanced than we are, but we believe what this empire says about them, so we don't pay any attention. to the frame of reference that they provide that could answer the question for us. So I really like how us asking that question, or I really like how I have been kind of pushed to ask that question more frequently of myself. And then that has forced me to go and learn some new things, right? Because, like, for example, the history of how the US um, makes another country dependent on it for food. I learned that because I kind of figured, well, what does it look like if we are pushing for food sovereignty? If we understand that we are not food sovereign in this country, what does that look like? And then I look at other countries that are food sovereign, and then I find out why they had to fight for food sovereignty. Then you find out that that's connected to US imperialism, and you find out how the US destroyed a country's ability to feed itself. Like that, getting that information, I think for me, this whole process of asking, well, what does it look like for us to do that? That question has helped me get to that information. I think in a way that just being kind of curious didn't. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that I'm learning to do that as an
Mm-hmm.
organizer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also in the private I dropped this is from 2012, Jemima's article on Clinton. Oh, I think actually sorry, that was the um wrong piece that I just dropped in there, but Jemima does have a piece on Bill Clinton loving loving
Mhm.
Haiti and really what what happened there. Let me
Yeah.
see if this actually will copy and paste the right one. There we go.
Okay.
So we could drop it for folks that want to get a little, obviously a little bit more information and background on that. I think some
Oh,
folks had some
absolutely.
questions about, not really knowing the history of this.
Hmm.
I mean, check out Black Agenda Report, and it's on Wednesdays, so Bar Wednesdays.
Hmm.
There's always something there that we can all learn from.
Okay, I'm gonna drop this in here for y'all. And whew, wow, this was a little bit hard to get through without the breaks. I miss Air Doctor.
I know, I know, so intense. I'm like, ooh, 2 hours.
Like, okay, I'm chatty and I can talk, but dang, man.
Also, I think, people are asking, and I noticed too, I don't know if we got demonetized again, but the super chat button is not there. So I haven't even been,
I don't I
saying
don't
that.
yeah, I don't know. I hope we're not demonetized again, but we'll figure it out. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. Um but I know we got a few minutes left and I really just wanted to goof off a little bit. Listen, I love, and I know we have a problem with Stephen King. I know we do because Stephen King in especially in his earlier books, and to be honest, I haven't read a Stephen King book since The Outsider. That's how many years ago. That was the last Stephen King book I read, and not for any reason other than I've just been busy organizing. I don't have time to read fiction. Shit, like real life nonfiction is terrifying enough. But
Yeah.
I get that people have a problem with Stephen King because they don't like how he will throw the N word in his stories, his characters. Yeah, he has racists as characters in almost all of his early stories, and I get that people have a problem with that, but I think people missed the context, completely missed it, because the reason King put those racist ass characters in his stories is because number one, all the stories are connected. Most of the Stephen King stories from the early years, they're all connected. And I'm going to try so hard not to give spoilers, but they're all connected. The Dark Tower, maybe not Christine, but Salem's Lot, absolutely. The whatchamacall, I can't remember what it, but anyway, in the context of the narratives in the universe that he creates, racism as a foundational sin of this country factors into the evil that King talks about in these communities. So the racists in King's characters are always the people who are closest to whatever the evil is, right? They are always an indication of how completely fucked up people are. And this is why these people exist. They're never presented in his stories as, oh, this is just how people are. Stephen King's stories are always about, like, human beings are fucked up. That is what Stephen King's stories are really about. The really evil things people do to each other. So when you're watching Welcome to Derry, this new series, you have to keep that in mind, because racism plays an enormous factor in this series. This is a prequel to it. This begins the kind of this is Pennywise's backstory, basically. All right. I'm trying not to give spoilers. I'm trying so hard. I'm just skipping over to. So when you're looking at this series, and I do encourage you to watch it, it takes place at a period of time where the racist shit that you see happening on the screen, it really happened. We know it really happened. So it is presented in this series in that context. It is awful. It is terrifying. It is violent. It is disgusting, because that's the point. It is like, how does this type of human evil exist and not produce that type, or not um incubate a kind of multi-dimensional evil. I hope I'm kind of explaining that in a kind of like a supernatural it, or a supernatural monster doesn't exist in a society with, healthy people, and who have healthy relationships with each other in a collective society, and that kind of stuff. This kind of evil can only exist in a society where people are this evil in real life, right? So I really like that this prequel series, the backstory of Pennywise, um, is does not shy away from the racism of this country. Now, Stephen King as an individual, the man grew up in Maine. Those people that he grew up around are exactly the people that he put in those books. His politics are shit, just like most white people in this country. Politics, absolutely shit. Yes, he is very pro Ukraine. Yes, all that. Yeah, he's very pro Democrat, very liberal. Absolutely true. But I do think that what I explained in the way that he framed these racist characters in his stories do have a connection to the kind of evil he was talking about. And I think this series, Welcome to Derry, which is on HBO Max, frames that probably in a way that in a better way than I just explained. In a better way than I just explained it. I think it's if you don't like horror, stay away from it, because it's kind of graphic. If you don't like children being terrorized, don't watch it. Do not watch it. That's the very first episode. But if you're a fan of King's early works, if you like the original It movies and miniseries, and I really did, it's I think you will enjoy it, and I really do think that it does provide a really interesting um, analysis of American racism, because it presents like this connected history of white racism, of white supremacy, of white supremacist violence between indigenous and Africans. It's there, and it's pretty good. I enjoyed it, so I hope you like it. Get you in the Christmas spirit.
Yeah. Total holiday season. That's great. I also wanted to, I would have said this for a remonetization, but I guess that's not a possibility. But still consistently, yeah, still consistently fundraising for immigration stuff. Hopefully that's just like a quick paperwork, but again, under this administration, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And some background of when I broke my leg and I couldn't work for a few months and have still been trying to, again, back in the US, things are a lot more expensive here. So
Mm-hmm.
if folks have the ability to support, amazing. More importantly, share it with your networks. If anyone else can, that would be, yeah, amazing.
Fantastic. You all have the link to the GoFundMe. Um, yeah, this is I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. I don't
I mean, we're a society that's just like either consistently asking for like mutual aid and GoFundMe and stuff because it's not sustainable. So we do have to turn to our folks, right? We do have to turn to our community. I'm very thankful that people do support, right? But of course, it does, having to consistently be in those situations, it's like, all right, this isn't
right.
working out for anybody.
Right, right. Like I think we've all. I hope we've all gotten to the point where we realize, okay, these stories about the neighbors who banded together and bought a car for their poor neighbor who walked 5 miles to and from work every day. Those are not feel good stories. Those are stories reflecting the collapse of society.
Right, right. So many stories that I see are like, oh, this 80 or 90-year-old that, got $1 million on his GoFundMe to help with, medical expenses because Walmart's not paying enough. I'm like, did I hear the age properly? Like,
Right. Right. Like, how do you not see that an 80-year-old working a job anywhere is a problem? How did you get past that and be like, oh, this is so not like, oh, just yeah, we've got a lot of decolonizing to do. A lot of decolonizing to do, and again, I go back to looking at the history of revolutionary struggle of the countries and the people who who are now sustaining and defending their revolution. I'm trying to figure out, how did y'all get y'all people to get it? Because I'm I'm struggling. I am struggling right now. Because I don't know how we gonna do it. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. It's a
Mm-mm.
struggle. It's a struggle out here. Revolution doesn't pay. Right? Certainly
not
not.
not not on the front end. Not on the front
Not on the
end.
front. Exactly.
Nope, not on the
Exactly.
front end. But
Exactly.
but
For what we're building for, that is that's
yeah,
the goal, right? And that's the drive. But in the meantime,
yeah. The meantime is the difficult one. So that's it, y'all. We are done for today. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today on this Ear Doctor Less Remix Morning Show. He'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Women's Wednesday. I'm Jackie. That's Clow, and we are out. Hmm.
peace, y'all.
Peace. Where is the thing? Oh, there.
Remix. 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 Remix.